Hello, and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in work and in life and simplify them. And friends, we've been talking a lot about AI all season long. You know this to be sure, right? Because this is the latest and greatest thing that's happening in, well, let's just face it, most every single industry in the modern workplace. And I want to zoom in and talk about AI, but from the lens of the talent acquisition department. These are your recruiters that you work with side by side in your offices. And the topic that we're going to simplify today is actually how to be a better recruiter in the age of AI. My special guest today, her name is Krista Tan, and she's got over 15 years of experience in people operations, talent acquisition, and business strategy. She's made a significant impact in the recruiting industry in her work and her career. She was the president of Premier Talent Partners, where she led a high-performing team of 65 people, earning the company accolades as best place to work, fastest growing recruiting agencies from Inc. and San Francisco Business Times. And now she's the co-founder of Talent Collective, a thriving community for women in the talent acquisition field. She's super passionate about recruiting, and she continues to work with a select number of clients, ensuring that they stay connected to their roots in the industry. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Krista Tan. Hey, Krista.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm so pleased you're here. And I feel like we have to name the big elephant in the room. First things first, will AI take my job as a recruiter?
Pretty much. I'm going to say no.
But the truth is, AI is not going to take your job. A recruiter who knows AI is going to take your job, right? And that's
Yes.
harsh, but that's the reality in this day and age, right?
It sure is. We tell people all the time that if you're not getting on board with AI and using AI in your day-to-day, you're going to get left behind, and it's whatever you're doing is old news already. So, it's time to start demoing tools. It's time to start implementing tools into your workflow, or else you really are going to be left behind.
And so if you're a recruiter listening to today and because I work in the HR industry as well. And when I surveyed my local kind of HR community of people, this was granted at the beginning of 2024. I swear 90% of people I talked to were like, I don't have time. I'm super busy. I don't know how to learn. I don't have time to learn this AI thing. Or they were in the other camp of like, yikes, it's going to take my job. So I'm going to pretend it doesn't exist. And it's just a flash in the pan and it's going to disappear. The truth is, it's not going anywhere.
Right.
And to your point, it's something that needs to be learned now if you haven't. So I hope that today's conversation like kind of dispels that fear and that scariness for you guys to just dig a little further and get connected and find the resources you need to get empowered and equipped in AI. But tell me, how can AI help people in the talent acquisition department? Give me a high level overview.
Yeah, well, you mentioned a lot of people saying, I just don't have time, right? I don't have time to go research these tools. I don't have time to utilize them or learn something new. AI is 100% all about saving you time. And so the time that you invest up front is really going to pay off long term. So it's all about saving time, streamlining, automating. One thing that I really recommend doing if you are curious and really wanting to implement some kind of AI is start small. Start with one part of your process, your recruiting process that is taking you a lot of time. Find a tool for that. And great thing is most tools right now have like a month free trial or, some kind of 2-week trial or something like that where you can try it for free. I will suggest some of those tools later on today, but start small and chip away at it, and you'll see that it will really save you time.
And I know that recruiters who've been in the business for a few years already know this, but let's say the outsider that's listening into our conversation today, Krista, could you go again, simplify it down, not super technical. What is the life cycle of the work that a recruiter does? Like the beginning is filling the pipeline. posting the jobs, finding the right talent, interviewing and securing? Give me a high level overview.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I would even say before filling the pipeline, you're identifying what those needs are for the organization, right? So a lot of that begins with meeting with hiring managers, meeting with your executive team, depending on how big or small your organization is. And really identifying and strategizing on what are the needs and the current openings. Are those the right needs for where your organization is today, but also where it's headed, right? So thinking through all of that, but then once you do have an idea of what you're hiring for, what positions, it is sourcing, it is finding talent, finding the right talent, attracting that talent. So a lot of it is about employer branding, recruitment marketing, making sure your brand is out there and that you are a desirable place to work from an outsider's perspective. And then really, once you have met a candidate, it's working them through the pipeline of the flow of the role, right? So screening them, interviewing them. There might be assessments along the way that are given depending on what the job is and the skill set. Usually the hiring manager is going to meet that person, maybe a couple of teammates, some leadership on the team. And then it's, hopefully the offer stage. So there's a lot of negotiating involved in that. And, really kind of closing a deal, so to speak. So I really see recruiting similar to, there's a lot of sales and marketing in the role, right? So thinking about it in those terms.
And I really appreciate you simplifying it down. We did a whole series earlier this season for those that are in transition, on the other side of the table that are looking for their next job or opportunity, right? I think it's nice to kind of dispel what does a recruiter do all day? And just everything that you just talked about, my goodness. There's such a wide range of skills are needed for a recruiter just by talking about the different phases. Recruitment marketing is just one piece of it, but is a massive piece. I mean, doing the actual screening calls is one piece, but a massive piece.
Right.
And then, not to mention a whole different skill set for data analytics and reducing that time to hire to be shorter, quicker, faster, more efficient to improve the candidate experience. Also say, I can see the value in having AI tools to help you do some aspects of your job where you might not be as great at certain parts, but that are skill that you're still building.
Yep. Yeah. And today in this market, it's all about doing more with less. And unfortunately, a lot of employees are put into that situation where either, their entire team has been reduced and they're like the only person left and they are doing it all. So again, I think that's really where AI can come in and help you do more with less and get some of that administrative, repetitive work really off of your plate.
Yeah. And Krista, I've heard this from other talent acquisition leaders that we've interviewed here at the podcast. Anecdotally, I'm curious if you saw the same. If we roll the tapes back, 2020, of course, was when everyone went to work at home, a forced mandate across the board. 2021 was this massive hiring boom. I just need to get butts in seats. So they're offering kind of sign-on bonuses and getting loads of people in. And it was a time it seemed very expansive in that way. 22 and 23 leaned down, massive cuts across the organization, including the talent acquisition team. So to your point, fewer recruiters on team, but technically doing the same level of workload. You have to be good at being efficient. You can't sweat the small stuff. And then 2024, I dare say, is still that leaning down process for a lot of major organizations and corporations, but almost kind of getting to a place of stabilizing the ship. Would you agree with that timeline from what you've seen with your clients and yourself?
Oh, yes, definitely 100%. I also think that, as we go into 2025, I think there needed to be an adjustment, right? Because hiring did get so crazy and it was just butts and seats and, a warm body to fill any spot. And sometimes there wasn't even a need to hire anybody, right? It was just this like fight for talent, any talent. And so now I think moving forward, we've kind of adjusted that, which is great. And companies are going in thinking, okay, who do I really need on my team? And hopefully being a lot more thoughtful about it, which will only serve everybody that is job searching, because you don't want to be in that situation where you get hired. Of course, that's amazing. But then 3 months later, 6 months later, the organization decides, oh, we made it, a wrong decision, and you're out of work again.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll see, just like you said, that stabilization happen more and more over the next year.
And I predict, and I'm curious if you say the same, I think more and more job descriptions that are going to be coming out and open roles that are going to get filled are going to have a required qualification of being adept at artificial intelligence and AI tools, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Claude, Perplexity, all of the ones that are out there, right?
Yeah, I think so. And you bring up something really interesting that I've been having some conversations with people about recently, which is utilizing AI in like a candidate utilizing AI in their job search and in their interview process, right? So a lot of recruiting teams and employers, there can be a concern that, oh, this person's going to cheat in their interview process or utilize AI or ChatGPT to get the right answer on, a question or something like that. And I've been starting to hear, I know of one or two companies right now that are actually encouraging that and encouraging candidates to use AI in their interview process because of exactly what you just said. This is a skill set we all need to get really good at. And we want to see how you're utilizing it so that we can say on the job, are you going to perform well for that piece of your job?
1,000%, because these are the skills that will make you more effective, more efficient, and ultimately driving the bottom line, like driving revenue growth and business growth.
Right.
Before I forget to mention this, everything that we talk about on this episode is in the show notes. So if you're listening, you're like, oh my God, I need to pull over my car and start taking notes. We got you. Just go to thesimplifiers.com, look up this episode with Krista Tan. You'll find all of the links of everything that we shared there. And on that note, it's funny, talking to recruiters today in this episode, but if there's any recruiters who are also in transition looking for their next role, I'll put a link in the show notes. I did a workshop for Indeed a few months back, actually sharing tips on how to use AI as a job seeker. So they're all there for you guys there.
That's
let's
great.
get back to recruiters, though. Recruiters who are in role and are using AI to help them do their jobs better. What are a few practical and maybe tedious and manual things that it can do and automate for you?
There are so many examples, and I'm going to probably forget a lot of them. But the first kind of bucket that I'll put these into is writing. So I think one thing that AI, especially generative AI, is really good at is writing and articulating, hopefully in your voice or your organization's voice, what you want out there. So writing job descriptions, it could be even like coming up with interview plans, interview questions for a certain role that you're creating from scratch. Once you're interviewing someone, there's tools that can summarize your interview notes. So those are tools like MetaView and BrightHire. And then there's sourcing, right? So, finding talent, and AI can be really good at that. I mean, old school recruiters know how tedious and time consuming putting together a Boolean search can be. So there's companies like Seekout and RecruitBot and Findem where they have AI built in, and it's just a very, very smart tool and way to find not only candidates that fit the role that you're looking for, but then also will help you reach out to those people, right? So creating a cadence, creating some kind of outreach or a campaign in order to, hopefully get those people to respond. And then there's even organizations now that are popping up that are doing that first screening of the candidate for you. And I know this one could be a lot more controversial because it goes back to, is this going to take my job? However, I'd also like to tie in the theme that we talked about earlier with doing more with less. And what you just talked about, which is candidates, so people looking for work are able to now use AI to get their profile in front of more companies. So that means there's more and more candidates applying to jobs. So there might be, think about this, there might be one recruiter at a company screening every single candidate that puts their resume through. Obviously, not all of those people are going to be qualified. So how do you get through 800 resumes of a posting that's been there overnight or maybe a week, right? How do you get through all those people? So that's where tools like Talent Llama, and there are just so many others, can really help you boil down out of those 800, right? Like, let's screen the top 50. And then out of those 50, okay, here are the 20 I want to talk to. So, it really does help recruiters do more with less, which we're all in that situation right now. I don't think anyone is blessed to have, multiple people on the team that, are just sitting around like waiting to screen candidates, right? So we can't be wasting time screening people that aren't a fit for the role, sadly. And tools like this really help. And then one last thing I'll mention, and I actually just did a demo this morning of a very up and coming tool that I think is really going to go places. It's called Poetry HR. And they just got funding. They basically just launched their product, but it's a suite of AI generated recruiter enablement tools. So really from start to finish, from scratch, creating all of the tools and resources and assets you're going to need for any given role. So just very, very smart tools out there, market intelligence tools, compensation tools that, will help you really identify where are we benchmarking this job and is it the right, benchmark for this location, et cetera.
I love it. And, again, these tools almost are like, how a superhero has a shield and battle armor and, but the cool cuffs and all the things, right? You can't, a superhero is not made up of all its tools. The superhero is the human inside that does the amazing things that they do. And I think about the very best recruiters I have met in my professional career are those relationship people, those very empathetic people who have high levels of emotional intelligence. Those are the skills that are irreplaceable in my mind. And AI helps you automate or make more efficient and simplify down all the tedious stuff, the administrative stuff that keeps you from doing your secret sauce special superhero work, right?
Yep, absolutely. And, I think whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, I think that key is the emotional intelligence and, having that desire to build relationships and long-term relationships. And so that's where just exactly what you mentioned, getting some of those things off your plate so that you really can focus on the relationship. And I'll give you a perfect example, which is the screening interview, right? In the past, and I still do this sometimes, I'm so focused on trying to get down the right notes. And if I'm recruiting for a job I've never recruited for, and there are acronyms I don't know, or, technologies I don't know, and I'm just worried about writing it down correctly and getting the right terminology, I am not focused on what that candidate is saying. And I'm not reading between the lines of what they're trying to say. I'm not able to utilize my emotional intelligence because I'm so focused on getting the right things on paper. So again, that's where a tool that is, listening in on that interview and taking notes for you can just be so effective and really help with that relationship building.
Yeah, I feel like that's a game changer. That one piece for recruiters, if you just were to test one thing, that would be the one I would
Yes.
start with, is the
Yep.
note-taking AI tool during interviews, so that you're focused and you're with a person, you're making
Yes.
eye contact if it's a video call. Because on the other side of the coin, the talent, the candidate can read your body language.
Yes.
All
Yes.
night and day. And if you're nervous, they're going to show up nervous, or they're going to be like, something's off here. Oh, I don't feel
Yep.
so great. And go with the other job offer. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And another thing I'll mention about, there's a few tools out there that not only, do like summarize the interview notes, but then, like, for example, you're not the only person interviewing in that process, right? You have hiring managers, you have teammates, you have other people on the team, et cetera. And not everybody knows how to interview well. And you are probably the person responsible for maybe training those people, but then you don't know how they're interacting with candidates once they're in those interviews. So there are tools out there that will actually like look at the data from all of the interviews and make recommendations like to certain interviewers that, like, hey, I've noticed, you are, I don't know, you have bias, you're asking only women these questions and men these questions, and it should be more, more fair and more equal. So that's another really cool thing about interviewing tools. That, it can really help train your team. Like, that's invaluable.
Yeah. And gosh, I mean, that alone is such a perfect example of utilizing the right digital technology to enhance what you do. And I think I'm going to be stereotyping here for a second. Apologies already ahead of advance. But I also imagine that a lot of folks in the recruitment and talent acquisition industry, they're people. They're not always super tech savvy folks. And I'm so sorry, that was a stereotype. But I also think that when you try to overload a staff of like, okay, we're going to implement 8 new AI tools and go, they're going to be like, I don't know how to handle any of this. So I'm going to use none of it. And I'm going to keep doing what I do, cranking the wheel very manually, falling behind, getting burnt out on the job. Right. So are there other kinds of mistakes that people make when they're adopting new AI tools?
Yeah, I think the most common thing I see is not really knowing which part of the process they're trying to solve for. So if you do have time to kind of do almost like an audit ahead of really going out and researching what those tools are, I would just try to really look at your entire process and like, where are you spending the most time, and where are all of those repetitive tasks that you're trying to offload to be more efficient, and then you can really go at it. I've heard of multiple people saying, the executives are just asking me, where are you using AI? Like, we want you to be using AI, and kind of pushing this idea, but they're not being specific. And so you yourself really have to identify that. And I think that'll save you time in the long run too, because you'll know which part of the process you're really trying to solve for.
And I think we covered it a little bit earlier, but I really want to put a pin in it. What tasks should you not delegate to AI, at least at this juncture, and how the technology is?
Yeah, anything with that relationship building, right? So even if you do have one of the screenings be an AI screening, you have to have people in your process. Like, no candidate wants to come work for a company where they haven't met anyone. And I don't think it'll ever be that way, right? So anything that has to do with relationship building rapport, selling the company. I mean, that's another big piece of it. And even though there are a lot of people, like a lot of job seekers out there right now, they still want to work at good companies. And so there is an art to selling and pitching your company that AI won't be able to do. And then, going further down the life cycle in the recruiting pipeline, I would say like offer negotiation, right? Again, that's just a very personal thing. You really need to know a lot about that candidate to know what's important to them. And hopefully all of that rapport that you've built during the process will come to a positive head at the end in that negotiation process, and hopefully an acceptance of that offer.
I'm so glad that you brought up employer branding, like how the company presents themselves to the talent pool that's out there. Employer value proposition, employer branding, that is such a incredibly important part of the whole process. I hate to use the analogy, but when you're going deep sea fishing and you want to have the right lure, right, to attract the right fish back to your boat, I think that there is a certain level of that. And I also personally believe, if your employee brand web page, like say your front page for your career page for your company, is full of like stock images of, you can clearly tell either AI generated or just not real pictures
Right.
of real people that work at that company, people can see right through it.
Yep.
And I think that there needs to be that human element, real photos of real people that work there and real humans writing the majority of that copy on that page. Yes, AI can do a dirty first draft and get your, juices flowing, but it requires that human, that voice, the voice of the employee to be human, right?
Yeah. And really show your culture, right? And I think you can even do that through job descriptions, but obviously if you do have like a careers page on your website, really showing the personality of the company, the culture, your values, all of those things I think are really important.
Yeah. Where do you see the talent acquisition world going next? Like what's happening in the pipeline that you have heard kind of murmurs in the next 6 to 9 months?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as the market goes, I think going back to what we talked about earlier, kind of this stabilization. Right now, a ton of people, I think, fortunately, I've been hearing a lot more people are getting work, but it's more in the form of gigs, right? So contract work, fractional work. And some people are really making a great career out of it. And some people are just taking what they can until they get a full-time job. So I think we'll continue to see a lot of that, and naturally companies are going to come. That's how they're going to come back in hiring, right? Is hiring contractors because they don't want to overcommit yet while they're still in this phase of are we growing, are we not? And then I think as far as AI tools go right now, there are a lot of products being brought to market and a lot of the same types of products being brought to market. Like I do demos all the time and I've seen, I don't know, let's say the interviews screening, that first screening, there's probably like 7 tools out there that I've demoed that are like seed funded right now. So at some point you're going to see those, start to get weeded out and then the cream of the crop really rise. So it'll be interesting to see what tools really last and which ones get bought out or die. But I think, we'll start to see the AI really get better and better for our industry.
Yeah. And I can imagine that some of these kind of bright, shiny startups that are getting funding now, if they have traction, they'll get bought out by the HRIS big dogs out there.
Yes.
I can see these functionalities coming under SAP or under Workday or something like that as an additional functionality. Gosh, there's so much to this, but I really am so grateful for you for simplifying it down. I think it's fascinating a little bit to do a little insider baseball kind of talking for recruiters, but I also really hope that this has been a fascinating conversation for those who don't work in talent acquisition and sort of see it as this mystical thing, because I would like to dispel that myth that these recruiters are just sort of, kind of skating by, only interviewing maybe 10 people, even though the LinkedIn post shows 800 applicants in 48 hours. I really, truly believe there is this pinch on recruiters, and I have a lot of empathy for them out there because you're overloaded with so many more candidates now because A, the job market is saturated, and B, more job candidates are using AI tools, which means they can apply for more jobs, higher volume than maybe even 2-3 years ago. And the recruiters, you've got less on your team. So you're doing more with less time. So I really hope that this kind of sheds some light, just gives you a different perspective of what's happening in the recruiting world. What would you say to a job seeker out there who is like, yeah, but why do I keep getting ghosted in the job process? What would you say to them as just insight?
Oh, goodness. I would say I'm going to go practical and then I'm going to go a little more philosophical. On a practical level, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes at that company. And even if the company has automation. So when you are hearing back, it's usually an automated message, right? So, and sometimes that is kind of nice just to say like, okay, they actually got my resume, like it actually went through, right? But just, kind of trying to think about like what's really going on, behind the curtain and we don't know, right? So that's one, I think kind of maybe like assuming positive intent. But then, on a more philosophical level, I think kind of going down that road of assuming positive intent, it's like, it's all about what you focus on, right? If you're going to focus on, oh my gosh, I'm not hearing back, that's just where your energy is going to be and you're going to be stuck, right? So focus on what you can control, which is reaching out to real people and asking to hop on a call, right? Like, you're not necessarily hopping on a call, can I get an interview for this role, but hopping on networking calls. I mean, the more you can be talking to people, the more you can be saying, what are you seeing out there? And do you know anyone I can talk to? Who else should I talk to about this?
Yes.
The more positive energy you're going to put in the right direction, right? So hopefully those are some things that help.
That's a great bit of advice. And I would clarify that. And I'm guessing this is what you're saying is not necessarily hopping on a call with a recruiter because they are overloaded. But if you have target companies that you love, 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 and hope to work for one day, find the people that you would work with that would be peers in that team and start hop on a call, 15, 30-minute kind of virtual coffee chat, build those relationships. Because by the time you do get in the pipeline, you can go, oh, you talked to Chuck. I talked to him 2 weeks ago. Oh, Sandra. Yeah, we chatted a month ago. And they go, oh, wow, you're already part of our culture. You know the people and all that. All right. So now I want to flip it really quick. What advice would you give to the recruiters out there who are ghosting people right now?
Yeah, I mean, if you have some way to automate, just send a message. Send a message when you get their application. Send a message when they're, if and when they're rejected. Also, candidates that are in play for a role that you're working, so somebody who is being interviewed in the process. I know we can all be really frustrated sometimes. Most of the time, the process takes a lot longer than I think recruiters want it to take. And that can be so many different reasons. But being respectful to the candidates in process, one of the things I love to do is the no update, right? Because they're just sitting there waiting and they might be waiting and comparing your role against another. And, oh, I thought I was going to have that next stage in the process or get to meet that next person, but it's been 3 weeks. What's going on? And so even just reaching out to them like, hey, I know I haven't gotten back to you. I said we were going to have another interview by now. Here, I'm waiting on XYZ. I'm thinking about you and I'll get in touch as soon as I can. That goes a long, long way.
Yeah. Remember, the other side of the coin is a human person too. I think empathy goes a long way. Even if you're overloaded, even if you've got 80 bazillion applicants to get through, a simple, hey, I haven't forgotten about you email goes a long way.
Yes.
Definitely. I want to remind everybody out here, there's a thing that she is running called Talent Collective Co. Can you tell us a little bit about the Talent Collective real quick?
Absolutely. So I run a community for women in the talent acquisition space. So we're almost 500 members globally now, and we're a baby. We're only about a year old. So we've had a lot of growth in this first year. We do both in-person events in 11 different cities all over the US and Canada. But we have a ton of virtual opportunities from professional development to mixers and just other ways to connect with women in our profession. And really, we're all about women supporting other women. So that's kind of our ethos and why we exist. And so if you're interested in learning more, I would love to hear from you.
That's awesome. Make sure also that you can also get 25% off of the first 3 months. If you are, someone that is interested in joining the Talent Collective, the coupon code is in the show notes at thesimplifiers.com, but it's 25 off is the coupon code for you. But then also they offer scholarships for those that are in transition. If you're unemployed or underemployed women in recruiting. So definitely reach out to Krista and her team. This is the way that we all rising tides, rise all ships, right? Yep. So build community and build your network by being part of something like this. Mm-hmm. So as we wrap up, and again, thank you so much for your time and peeking behind the proverbial curtain there. I have a few questions that I ask everybody that comes on the podcast. So here we go. First things first, what is one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Sure. So this has nothing to do with recruiting at all, but it's a book that I'm currently reading. I have 3 children, so this is a parenting book. My kids are 5, 7, and 9, and so soon we're going to hit the preteens and the teens. And technology is a big hot topic these days. But the book is called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, and basically, in a nutshell, his 2 points are, as a culture, we now underprotect our kids in the physical world. So out there in real life, overprotect. That we overprotect them in real life, right? We're so scared of them getting kidnapped or this or that we don't give them the freedom they need in order to learn and grow as they should. But then we underprotect them in the virtual world, right? And I think very naturally, parents want to let their kids go on to technology to get a break. But there are dangers out there in the virtual world that we need to be aware of. So it's just kind of all about balancing those 2 things.
Oh, such a good book. You guys, I'll put the link in the show notes so you can check it out there. Again, thesimplifiers.com. So tell me, who's one person, somebody in your network personally that you just feel is up to brilliant things and we could shine a spotlight on them? Who would that be?
I would love to highlight Rocky Howard, and she actually has a background in talent acquisition and people operations, but now she runs her own firm doing DEI. So she works with companies who have DEI initiatives and consults with them, and she's just phenomenal, just a wonderful, wonderful human being. Highly recommend her if anyone is doing some DEI work.
Love it. We will link Rocky up in the show notes so you guys can check her stuff out as well. I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
Oh my goodness, so many things. I feel like I have my dream job right now, and it's tying in the world of recruiting, which I love and is my passion. But then, as I mentioned earlier, it's supporting other women in our space and helping to empower them. So, just really grateful for the business we've created and the women that we're able to help through it.
Brilliant. We have all of her social media links in the show notes as well. So if you want to get connected to Krista, you can find her over there. Again, thesimplifiers.com. My final question for you today is this. Someone somewhere, let's say she's a recruiter, is out here and she just heard our episode. She's like, oh my God, I literally really don't have time to learn a new thing. Mm-hmm. She's feeling overwhelmed, overworked, and on the brink of burnout. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear just to encourage her in this moment?
Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Try to just pause and just try to be calm.
Yeah, you got this. Krista, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.